The Rosetta Stone, a bust of the Egyptian Queen Nefertiti, and dozens of marble statues from the Parthenon. What do these artifacts and works have in common? Well, they're all stolen. They're among thousands of other relics and artworks that have been plundered and trafficked from across the globe and are currently found in some of the most iconic museums in North America and Europe. You can find the ancient Greek bull Euphronos crater at the Met and the Indian Kohinoor diamond at the British Museum. In the 21st century, why should these museums, whose collections were built off of shady dealings and colonization, be able to keep these stolen artifacts and artworks? These museums should be working towards returning stolen items in their catalogs. As someone who's a very avid history lover, including some of the lesser ideal parts of it, I've always been interested in the controversies surrounding artifacts, as they are mysterious and often very dark. These museums hold artifacts and artworks that were taken from regions that were firmly occupied or in conflict. As more of those regions call for restitution and reparations, debates have sparked on what to do with the items taken. But ultimately, a compromise should be made between governments and museums as to tackle that gray area surrounding displaying cultural artifacts. With that said, the main problem is that museums house artifacts and artworks that are stolen from other places and cultures. As stated earlier, many high-profile museums like the British Museum and the Met do not have items that do not originate from where they're in currently. For instance, the Rosetta Stone is an iconic Egyptian artifact, yet it's in the British Museum. Additionally, according to art historian Eddie Chambers, 100,000 Greek artifacts are in the British Museum today, with 65,000 of them being stolen, according to a statistic from GeoGlobal. Yet as countries started becoming independent like Greece, they started calling for a return of artifacts, creating this back and forth conflict between countries and museums for who truly own these works. And I believe the root of that problem is colonization and conflict itself. This map shows in green all the places that Europe has colonized and conquered. Many British, French, and German museums contain items from South America and from Africa, all of which that were stolen from indigenous people. A particular artifact that has been kind of a hotspot are the Benin bronzes from Nigeria. The Nigerians have been trying to campaign for these since the 1960s when they gained independence, and still many of the bronzes have not been returned. Another prominent disputed artifact are the Elgin marbles from the Parthenon in Greece. However, the conflict surrounding these artifacts is a gray area since they weren't technically stolen from Greece. As philosopher Jenna Thompson discussed, the Ottomans were in control of the Greeks at the time they gave the British permission to take the sculptures. But after the Greeks gained independence, they started demanding the return of them, despite the British having the permission to take those sculptures at the time they were taken. However, no matter the loopholes or technicalities surrounding stolen artifacts, one thing is for sure: their ownership should be returned to where they came from, and museums should be more willing to communicate with countries that they've taken artifacts from, not only just to be accountable for the crimes that they've done, but also to help foster a more positive relationship between countries and museums. Agreements such as a loaning period to have artifacts come back to international museums for research or exhibitions can help make both sides be happy about the artifact. One side could own the artifact and the other could still use it to draw in more viewers to their museums. With that said, some might argue that returning artifacts to their countries of origins might deplete museums that already exist. Yet, that would actually just diversify the amount of museums that are around in the world, due to the fact that other museums would have more to offer across the globe, as Dr. Pierce Swanson argues in his entry in the Journal of Art Management, Law, and Society. In the same article, he even talks about conversations with South American restitution activists who revealed that they only wanted specific items to be returned as they had the most importance in their own cultures. But whatever museums want, or whatever museums and governments decide to do on stolen artifacts, the most important thing is to listen to both sides and be mindful of each other. Museums represent this problematic colonial view of the world by displaying artifacts obtained through plunderings and war. And as more countries speak out about their mistreatment under colonial powers, the demand to return these artifacts is more prevalent. And yet, it's important that these agreements that are eventually be made in returning these items is mutual and satisfy both parties. The world is actively trying to right the atrocities of the past. And why should we give a pass to museums? They're reminders of pillagings and lootings that resulted from colonization. Museum restitution can help decolonized countries reveal the truth of history and foster a more healthy relationship with former imperial powers, creating a better world.